They were born minutes apart, but for the first 9 years of their lives, time meant nothing to them. To the twins, Eva and Miriam, the world existed in pairs. 2 bowls on the table, 2 coats hanging by the door, 2 small hands gripping the same piece of bread as they walked to school. Their mother used to laugh and say that if one of them scraped a knee, the other would cry before even seeing the blood. Their father called them one soul, learning how to live in 2 bodies. Before the war reached their town, life followed a gentle rhythm. Mornings began with the smell of warm soup. Afternoons were spent racing each other through narrow streets, always arriving at the same time, always breathless and laughing. At night, they slept in the same bed, whispering stories into the dark, promising each other that nothing could ever pull them apart. When fear crept into the adults' conversations spoken softly, late at night, the twins barely noticed. Adults worried. Children trusted. Then the rules began to change. First, small things disappeared. Friends stopped visiting. Certain shops closed without explanation. Their parents spoke less at dinner. Eva noticed that her mother folded clothes more carefully now, as if preparing for something unnamed. Miriam noticed that their father stood by the window longer than usual, watching the street instead of the sky. But still, every morning, the twins walked hand in hand, convinced that as long as they stayed together, nothing truly bad could happen. The day they were ordered to pack was quiet. No shouting, no chaos. Just a knock at the door, and a list read without emotion. Their mother knelt in front of them and adjusted their coats, her hands shaking despite her forced smile. "Stay together," she whispered, as if repeating it enough times could turn it into a shield. The twins nodded seriously. This was a promise they already knew how to keep. The journey blurred into a single long memory of noise and waiting. Crowded spaces, confused voices, adults trying to appear calm while failing badly. Through it all, Eva and Miriam held on to each other, fingers locked, silently counting breaths. When fear threatened to overwhelm them, they played a game each, naming something they could still see, something that proved the world had not completely ended. When they arrived, nothing looked like the place they had imagined. It wasn't dramatic. It was orderly. Too orderly. Lines formed quickly. Instructions were barked. People were moved like pieces on a board whose rules no one explained. The twins stood pressed against each other, repeating their names under their breath, afraid that if they stopped saying them, they might forget who they were. Then came the moment that would divide their lives into before and after. An officer stepped forward. His eyes did not linger. He did not look at faces. He pointed. Left. Right. Faster than thought. The line shifted. An adult tried to ask a question and was silenced immediately. Eva felt a sudden pull on her arm. Miriam tightened her grip. For a heartbeat, the world froze. 2 children staring at each other, terror dawning at the exact same time. "Stay with me," Eva whispered. "I am," Miriam answered. But the line moved again. Hands separated. And for the first time since they had been born, the twins were no longer standing side by side. Eva felt the fabric of Miriam's sleeve slide from her fingers like water. 1 second, she was there warm, real, breathing in the next. She was swallowed by Boaties moving in the opposite direction. The air filled with shouting, but it wasn't the kind of shouting that explained anything. It was noise designed to erase thought. Eva tried to step back, to reach again, but a hard hand pressed against her shoulder and forced her forward. "Miriam!" she screamed, the name ripped out of her chest like something alive. She saw Miriam only once more, a flash of pale face, eyes wide and wet, mouth forming Eva's name without sound because the noise was too loud. Miriam's small hand lifted as if to wave, but it wasn't a wave. It was a playa then. The crowd closed and she was gone. Eva stumbled into a line of children. Some were older, trying to look brave. Some were younger, crying openly until they were silenced by fear or by adults who didn't want attention. Eva didn't stop crying. She couldn't. She kept turning her head, trying to find the familiar dark braid, the small freckle near Miriam's nose, the slight tilt of her chin when she was about to argue. Every face she saw was wrong. A woman behind Eva leaned down and whispered, "Don't call out again." Her voice was urgent, cracked. They notice. "But my sister," Eva choked on the words. The woman's hand tightened around Eva's elbow. "If you want to survive, you learn to swallow your voice." Survive. The word hit Eva like a slap. She had never thought about survival as something separate from living. Survival, in that moment, sounded like a bargain with a cruel god. But she nodded because the fear in the woman's eyes was not theoretical. It was practiced. They were moved again. Another line, another order. Eva tried to hold on to the last thing that felt solid. Her own name. She repeated it silently. "Eva. Eva. Eva." She repeated Miriam's name too, as if saying it inside her head could keep Miriam tethered to the same world. Miriam, Miriam, Miriam. Hours passed in fragments. A cold room, a smell she would never forget. A number written down without looking at her face. Someone cutting hair. Someone barking at children to stand still. Eva's hands shook so badly she had to press them against her thighs to hide it. That night, she lay on a hard surface among other children, staring into darkness that felt thick enough to touch. There were whispers around her hymns, prayers, promises. Eva didn't whisper. She didn't pray. She clutched the inside of a coat pocket, where a small button had fallen loose earlier that day. Miriam had once told her that buttons were lucky if you found them unexpectedly. It was ridiculous. It was childish. It was all she had. In the morning, the routine began. Not a routine of life, but of endurance. Stand, move, wait, eat something that barely deserved the name food. Eva watched older women teach younger ones how to hide panic on their faces, how to keep their eyes down without looking weak, how to stand when their legs shook. Eva tried to ask about Miriam carefully, quietly, the way the woman had told her. She asked a girl who looked about 12. The girl stared back at her with the flatness of someone who had already learned the most dangerous truth. "Don't look for people," the girl said. "It hurts too much." "But she's my twin," Eva whispered. She's me." The girl's expression didn't soften. "Then it will hurt even more." Days passed. Eva stopped calling out loud. Not because she stopped caring, but because she learned the price of being noticed. Yet every time a new group arrived, her heart sprinted. Every time she heard a familiar accent, she turned too quickly. Every time she saw a braid, her lungs locked. Then, one afternoon, she saw a child across the yard who moved the way Miriam moved, restless, like she was always about to run. Eva's body reacted before her mind could stop it. She stepped forward, whispering Miriam's name like a spell. The child turned, and it wasn't Miriam. Eva's knees buckled. She caught herself before falling, but something inside her cracked quietly, like thin ice under a footstep. She understood then that hope in T's plays was not gentle. Hope was a blade you held against your own throat. That night, Eva made herself a promise she hated. She would stop searching with her eyes, because if Miriam was alive, Eva had to stay alive long enough to find her someday. And if Miriam was gone, Eva couldn't afford to learn that truth here. Not yet. But the next morning, something happened that made her realize the camp was not done rearranging her life. A guard called her number and told her she was being moved to a different section, one she had never seen before. The new section felt colder, though Eva could not explain why. The buildings looked the same, the ground just as hard, the faces just as hollow, but everything sounded quieter, as if the air itself had learned not to speak. Eva was placed among older children, most of them teenagers who moved with the careful economy of people who had learned not to waste strength or attention. No one asked her name. No one wanted to know where she came from. Names, Eva quickly learned, were dangerous. They attached you to memories. They invited questions. And questions, here, were liabilities. She missed Miriam most in the small, cruel moments, when food was passed down the line, and Eva instinctively reached to split it in half. When she woke from sleep, heart racing, convinced she had heard Miriam breathing beside her. When she counted steps, she still counted in pairs. Even alone, her mind refused to learn the rhythm of one. Time stopped behaving like time. Days stretched without markers. Weeks disappeared without ceremony. Eva grew taller, thinner, quieter. She learned which expressions to erase from her, phase and which ones to borrow from the others. Neutral, empty, invisible. At night, she whispered Miriam's name into her sleeve, pressing fabric against her mouth so no sound escaped. It was not hope exactly, it was preservation. If she stopped saying the name, even silently, she feared Miriam would dissolve into something unreal, like a dream that fades when you wake too slowly. Other children noticed Ava's silence and mistook it for strength. They came to her when they needed someone steady to stand beside them. Eva became good at standing still. Good at listening without reacting. Good at surviving. But survival came with a cost. She began to forget. Small things. The exact shade of Miriam's eyes. The sound of their shared laughter. Even their secret childhood jokes started to blur. Panic would rise in her chest when she realized she could no longer remember a detail she once knew by heart. She would force herself to recall anything at all to prove the past was still real. One evening, an older girl sat beside her and spoke without looking at her. "If you want to make it through," she said quietly, "you have to stop living in before." Eva didn't answer. "You can remember later," the girl continued. "Later is safer." Eva wanted to scream that later was not guaranteed, that later might never come. But she swallowed the words because she understood the truth behind them. Memory could keep you human, but it could also destroy you. So Eva made a decision that felt like betrayal. She began to build walls inside her own mind. She stopped imagining Miriam's face, stopped picturing their old room. She told herself stories, instead stories, where Miriam had escaped early, where she was safe somewhere far away, stories where separation was temporary, not final. These stories were lies, but they were survivable lies. Months passed. Ava's body adapted to hunger, too cold, to fear. Her mind adapted to becoming sharper in some ways, emptier in others. She learned how to disappear in plain sight, how to listen without hearing ode to Enduri. Then, one day, a whisper traveled through the section. 2 words passed carefully from mouth to ear. "Twins are valuable." Eva didn't understand at first. She thought it was another rumor, another false explanation for the chaos. But she began to notice things. Certain children were watched more closely. Names were checked. Ages were compared. Questions were asked quietly, selectively. Ava's chest tightened. "Serial said," with a clarity that made her dizzy, that being a twin might no longer be just a memory, it might be dangerous knowledge. She stopped speaking entirely. If anyone asked about her family, she shrugged. If someone mentioned siblings, she stayed silent. She trained herself not to react when she heard the word twin, even when it sliced through her like glass. But secrets have weight, and Eva could feel hers pressing down on her every day. One afternoon, she was pulled aside again. Not roughly, almost politely. The difference terrified her more than shouting ever had. A woman looked at her paperwork. "You were born in the same year as another child from your transport," she said casually. Eva stared at the ground. "Do you have a sister?" the woman asked. For a single second, Ava's heart stopped. This was the moment, the one where everything could collapse. Truth would bind her to Miriam again. A lie might sever that bond forever. Eva opened her mouth, and for the first time in her life, she chose to lie about her other half. "No," she said, "I was alone." The word tasted like ash. The woman nodded and waved her away. Eva walked back to her place, legs shaking, mind roaring. She had saved herself. She had protected something fragile, or she had erased Miriam completely. She didn't know which, but that night, as she lay awake, staring into darkness, one thought refused to leave her. If Miriam was alive somewhere in this place, she was making the same impossible choices. And if they both survived, they might emerge as strangers who shared a past neither of them could safely remember. Ava's hands shook when the bell rang, a cold clang that echoed across the barracks. She didn't expect it, didn't want it, but she still stepped toward the door, wondering why it was suddenly so difficult to breathe. She wasn't a child anymore. She hadn't been for years, but the sound of a name, familiar, distant name, had a way of cutting through all the layers of survival she'd built. The name was different now, spoken by a stranger. Eva, the woman asked. The voice was thick with an accent Eva couldn't place, but the sound of her own name left a pit in her stomach. Eva Richter, the woman repeated. She stared at the floor, afraid to look up, afraid to look anywhere that might trigger something she could never unsee. Yes, she answered quietly, not knowing if she was speaking to the woman or to the ghosts that still followed her. She tried to imagine Miriam's face, the curve of her cheek, the exact color of her eyes, but nothing would come. The woman pulled out a piece of paper from her jacket, unfolded it carefully, and handed it to Eva. I have a message for you, from the camp archives. Eva's hands went numb. It was happening again. Someone, somewhere, had remembered her. She could feel her heart racing, the rush of panic rising in her throat. Asterisk, was it Miriam? Had they found her? Asterisk, the woman saw Eva's trembling hands and softened. It's an address. Someone asked for you. Eva felt a flicker of something inside her. Was it hope? She looked at the paper again. It wasn't Miriam's name. It wasn't even a name she recognized. But still, the address was enough to send her thoughts spinning. A moment passed, then another. I don't know this person, Eva said quietly. The words felt hollow. The truth was, she didn't know who she was anymore, let alone anyone else. But something inside her shifted. Something deep and primal. The address was a way out. A way to feel like her life wasn't just a string of endless separations. Eva nodded slowly. Thank you. The woman left, as quietly as she had arrived. Eva stood at the door, staring down at the paper. The edges were worn, creased, as if it had been passed through many hands before reaching hers. She knew what she had to do. She had to find out who had left this message, had to follow it. Maybe it wasn't Miriam, but maybe it was something more important than that. Maybe it was a chance for something she hadn't had in years, something that could let her remember what it was like to live outside the walls that had been built around her. The twins weren't the only ones who had been lost in this place. The survivors, those who still had enough breath in their bodies to scream or cry, needed each other, needed to remember. And so, she set out. She couldn't let another day pass without knowing who had thought to send her a message that, somehow, might change everything. Eva did not tell anyone about the address. Some things felt too fragile to share, like they might shatter if spoken out loud. She folded the paper and placed it inside the lining of her coat, close to her chest, where she kept the few things that still felt like hers. That night, sleep did not come easily. Every time she closed her eyes, memories pressed in hands, slipping from hers in a crowded line, a scream swallowed by shouting, the unbearable silence that followed. She had learned not to ask questions in the camps. Questions led to disappointment. Hope was dangerous, but this was different. This was not hope handed to her by rumor or fantasy. It was ink on paper. An address, proof that someone, somewhere, still believed she existed. The journey took days, trains, long walks, unfamiliar towns that felt both foreign and strangely close. Eva watched faces through dirty windows, wondering how many of them carried stories like hers, hidden beneath ordinary expressions. She practiced calm. She practiced indifference. Survival habits were hard to unlearn. When she finally arrived, the house was small and unremarkable. A narrow street. Faded door. For a long moment, Eva stood frozen, her hand hovering inches from the handle. She told herself this could be nothing, a mistake, another cruel coincidence. She knocked. Anyway, footsteps approached. Slow. Careful. The door opened. The woman standing there was older than the girl Eva remembered. Her hair was gray, her face lined by years that had not been kind. But her eyes, Eva knew them instantly. The shape, the depth, the way they widened in shock. Neither of them spoke. For 67 years, Eva had carried the absence of her twin like a missing limb. She had buried Miriam 1,000 times in her mind, because believing she was gone was the only way to survive. Now, standing inches apart, the world tilted. "Miriam," Eva whispered. The woman's lips trembled. "Eva?" That was all it took. The space between them collapsed. They clung to each other, not as children, not as survivors, but as two halves that had never stopped searching. They cried without shame, without restraint, for the years stolen from them, for the lives lived apart, for the silence that had nearly erased them both. Later, sitting at a small kitchen table, they spoke in fragments. Names, places, losses. Each sentence stitched something back together. They learned how close they had come to forgetting each other completely and how narrowly that forgetting had been avoided. The camps had divided them. Time had buried the truth, but memory, fragile as it was, had endured. That day did not erase the past. Nothing could, but it proved something Eva had never dared to believe. Some bonds survive even history's darkest attempts to destroy them.